Giancarlo Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Hit right field towards the corner. Gone!
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio.
Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, will LeBron and the Cavs close out tonight? And the decision to keep Steph Curry in the game after hitting his head on the court. Good idea or bad idea? Plus, which NFL team should be Super Bowl favorites? The First Take podcast starts right now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Take. Kerry Champion here with Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith in Cleveland. Good morning, Stephen A.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
You know,
Good.
every morning I have to come out to this desk just as Mike Golick is finishing on the Mike and Mike set, which is just right over here across the floor. And he's coming this way. And Harry and I, you're never here, but Harry and I always see him. And he is so happy.
He's very pleased
because they are finished after 4 long, hard hours of radio. And it gets me in too good a mood for the show because I want to be in a bad mood for him.
For this guy. He's always,
it makes me too, like,
Golick is always saying hi and good morning.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen A., when he's here, sometimes has an opportunity to acknowledge it.
Well, I don't need to be there in order for y'all to be in a good mood. We all know that when I'm not around, y'all are not very, very happy.
Yeah,
so the fact that I'm here, even though it's via satellite, is more than enough to leave you in a good mood. Let's just be clear.
I will accept that.
You will. All right.
All
well, good. Obviously, a big game in Cleveland tonight, Stephen A. We'll get to that. Glad you're there. On the show today, though, we're talking about Ray McDonald released from the Bears roster after he was arrested once again for domestic violence. But here's the question. Do you believe the Bears should have hired him in the first place? We'll get to that. And just mentioned Hawks take on the Cavs. Will the series end tonight? We will talk about that. Perhaps not. Because you know what happened yesterday.
Do I?
The brooms are out. No need for them. James Harden and the Rockets avoid a sweep.
Okay.
Yeah, they avoided it. So it's the first time in NBA history a team has overcome a 3-0 deficit. It's never been done, actually. So we're trying to see if, in fact, the Rockets can do it. They are the second team in NBA history to win 4 straight elimination games by double digits in a single postseason. Rockets were on fire. They scored 45 points in the first quarter, tied for the most points in the first quarter in NBA postseason history. Lots of records tied and made last night. So here's the question. How surprised were you by the way the Rockets responded in an elimination game? Stephen A., I almost felt as if James Harden heard you yesterday.
Well, I'm not going to go that. I'm not going to go that far. We all know that even if he did hear me, he's too sensitive to admit it. So let's just leave it at that. What I will say to you is that he was absolutely spectacular last night. He got the job done. He stepped up in an elimination game. It was the 4th straight elimination game that the Houston Rockets have won, which to me is a testament not just to great James Harden and the Houston Rockets, but specifically Kevin McHale and the job that he's done with these players. I give him an awful lot of credit. I think he deserves it. James Harden showed up last night. The J was flowing. The 3-pointers were flowing. He hit 7 of them. He was attacking with vigor. He understood the urgency of the moment, and he responded the way that great players are supposed to respond. But that's just part of the job. He's got 2 more games to go. And when you look at the Golden State Warriors, as much credit as we are willing to give the Houston Rockets, let's also point the finger at the Golden State Warriors. They didn't come out ready to play. They got Houston scored the first 12 points of the game. We all know that Curry got hurt, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. But the reality is that the Golden State Warriors, they have, at least last night anyway, it appears to be a situation where they have such an affinity with playing at the Oracle, which is obviously the best home crowd in the NBA and maybe the best home crowd I've ever seen in my 20 years of covering the NBA. I must confess to you that I got the impression watching the Golden State Warriors last night, Skip, that they were a franchise that had no problem losing last night's game, because they got games, they've got game 5 back at the Oracle. I think it was a kind of situation where even though if the opportunity had presented themselves to finish Houston off, they would have done so. I actually think they prefer it this way. I actually think getting to the finals, advancing to the NBA finals, winning a Western Conference Finals on their home court is what they really, really want to do. And I don't believe that whatever effort, whatever professionalism, whatever due diligence they put forth in Game 4 is going to be in any way comparable to what we're going to see from them in Game 5 on their home floor. If Houston goes out and wins Game 5 at Golden State, look out, because in all likelihood we may very well end up having a Game 7 back at the Oracle. I'm just saying, I don't think it'll come to that. I think Golden State's going to finish them off, because I think Golden State to some degree took last night off. That's not to take away from what we saw from James Harden. James Harden still hit 13 of 22 shots, still hit 7 of 11 three-pointers, still finished with 45 points on the night, and had obviously 9 rebounds and 5 assists as well. But I really, really believe that the effort Golden State put forth pales in comparison to what we're going to see from them in Game 5.
Okay, before I launch, for the record, I predicted a Golden State sweep, and I was wrong about that. Obviously, last night I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think you went a little too easy on the Golden State Warriors, Stephen A., because this is just me. And you were really hard on the Rockets yesterday. I'm going to be the same on Golden State, because I was dumbfounded and I was disgusted by what I saw or didn't see from the Golden State Warriors just in the first quarter last night. I hear all your points, but they should be embarrassed and ashamed by what they did and did not do in the first quarter last night, because I remind you, this was the best defensive team in the National Basketball Association through the regular season. And maybe I should underscore that word was, as in past tense. Last night it was not, because Stephen A., 45 points allowed in the first quarter was the most points the Golden State Warriors allowed in any quarter all season long. 45 first quarter points. And as you know, defense is mostly about desire, and I saw virtually none from this team. And I'm going to start with the head coach, Steve Kerr, and I'm also going to go to the leader of this team and the new MVP, Steph Curry. Before this game, those two leaders did not set the right closeout game tone for this team. For whatever reason, they didn't push the right buttons of urgency in a closeout game. And you're right. Either they thought that the Houston Rockets, as you sort of were leaning toward yesterday, were just going to flat out lay down and roll over and play dead in Game 4 in Houston. Or, to your point, Golden State's thinking, you know what, it'd be a whole lot cooler if we waited till Game 5 to clinch our first NBA Finals berth since 1975 before a home crowd. Well, if you're right about that, Mr. Smith, I got to tell you, that is a dangerous game you're playing against a team that in the previous round came from 3-1 down to shock the Los Angeles Clippers. Because there's something weird about this Rockets team. It's got this weird spirit to it. Just when you think it's completely defeated, just when you think it did lay down and play dead, it bounces back to life, inexplicably. And again, obviously, last night, the strategy in the first quarter against Josh Smith was just don't guard him from the three-point line. And by the way, for the record, Josh Smith is the second worst all-time three-point shooter in the history of this league, to Charles Barkley, I might point out.
Okay.
Josh Smith at 29%, Charles Barkley for his career at 27%. So they're like, just shoot it.
Right.
And guess what? He makes his first three. So is that an aberration? Well, they make 8 first-quarter threes, do the Houston Rockets. That's the most they made, bless you, in any quarter all year long. All year long, they make 8 threes. They make 17 of 22 shots. That's 77% of their first quarter shots. That's outrageously poor defense. It's shameful defense on the part of the best defensive team. And look, in the end, I'm with you. James Harden was spectacular. I think in your eyes, he redeemed himself. I didn't think he needed to really redeem himself, but when you score 33 in the second half, that's going to be pretty hard to overcome. But in the end, this game was really over in the first quarter. When you look back at it, it was really done then. And I just hope that the Golden State Warriors haven't set a trap for themselves now?
Well, I don't want to go as far as saying that James Harden redeemed himself, because I knocked what I saw in Game 4. I didn't knock his overall performance in the playoffs, because for the most part he's been spectacular and he's carried this team all season long. Not to mention he was a legitimate very close number 2 MVP candidate for this season. What I'm saying is that last night nothing changed. James Harden did what you would expect him to do under those circumstances. And by those circumstances, Skip, what I mean is when you have a lead or it's nip and tuck, he's there for you. My knock against him is when his team is bleeding and they're falling apart, he is able to do very, very little to stifle it. That's my point. But he did, to some degree, do exactly that last night, because when they were down, when the Warriors were down 25, and ultimately creeped it to within 10 and 9, and at one point 7. James Harden was on the bench, comes off the bench, and scores 7 straight.
Yep.
That's what I mean when I say that's what I'm looking for from him.
Yep.
You just going back and forth. He's going to do his thing. He'll eat you up. You got a lead. He'll bury you. But when you are bleeding and you are hemorrhaging, does he step in and stop it? Last night he did that. And that is what I'm saying you should be looking for from a player as great as James Harden. Now he's got to do it again, because we know they're going to be bleeding a little bit come Game 5.
I would say they would be.
State.
Yeah, well, if in fact James Harden owed his team a game off Game 3, I think they got repaid last night, especially in the second half.
I agree with that.
That was fair.
I agree with that.
All right, so you talk about Josh Smith and that three-pointer he made. The Warriors and the Rockets combined to make 37 three-pointers last night. They set a record. The last time you had that many was 33, set by the Rockets and Sonics in '96. Let's move on and stay with the game, though, but talk about Steph Curry. He left the game with a little less than 6 minutes to go in the first half after a nasty fall over the back of Trevor Ariza while trying to block a shot. He banged the back of his head as he landed and stayed on the floor for a while. He was attended to by the medical staff there for the Warriors. He went to the locker room under his own power. We got up, we saw him walk away. He was rubbing his head. Curry returned to the game, however, with 5 minutes and 58 seconds left in the third quarter. The Warriors saying that he underwent tests, and Curry saying he's fine.
We had worse symptoms and stuff from getting hit in the head and all that, but that was the scariest one, because you kind of, like I said, you're in the air for a long time and not knowing how you're going to hit the floor, knowing that it's going to happen, it's inevitable, as you're up there just trying to brace yourself. And in the seconds afterwards, obviously, it's a scary feeling. I didn't know when I was walking off the court, because when you have falls like that, you don't really know what's going to happen in the next 15, 20 minutes, how you're going to feel. And I was still kind of a little in shock, I guess, just from the feeling of falling, because you don't go, that happen every game, so you kind of got to just gather yourself and kind of regroup a little bit.
Again, the Warriors saying he underwent tests. He did not show signs of any or symptoms of a concussion. But Stephen A., let me ask you this. Do you believe that Curry should have returned to the game?
Personally, I don't, but I'm in no position to question the medical staff and Coach Steve Kerr and the ownership for the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, they value Steph Curry a great deal. He means the world to that franchise, and I think it's safe to say that if they thought in any way that it was a dangerous or a precarious situation for Steph Curry to be out there, then they would not have allowed it to happen. And that's not even taking into account concussion protocols in the NBA and all of this other stuff. It's just common sense that they're going to value Steph Curry more than any of us would. And I truly believe that. So I certainly don't want to cast any aspersions on the organization, Steve Kerr, or the doctors or anybody else. It's just, for me personally, I would not have put him back out there. And the reason why I would not have put him back out there is that, to me, if the players can't find a way to get it done without them, you still got 3 games left in this series with Steph Curry on the floor, safe and sound, because all the necessary, protocols and things of that nature were exercised. That's just my belief. I'm not knocking them for it at all. But if it were me, I would not have cared what the doctors had to say, or anybody else for that matter. I would have told Steph Curry, you're sitting down for the rest of the night. Sit on the bench and watch this game, but you're not playing. I'm going to make sure everything is all right. That's just me.
I am with you two different ways here. I'm with you medically for sure. I think I'm looking at this also strategically. So I'm with you, Stephen A. I'm not going to certainly condemn Steve Kerr for saying, sure, go ahead if you're ready. If the doctors clear you and Steph says, I want to get back out there. Clearly, Steph, as the new MVP, wanted to show his teammates in the NBA world, this is what I'm made of. I'm going to have the courage to come back for my guys because this game is still teetering and we still have a chance. And I admire that greatly. We know we all respect Steph so much. And that's after, and I think you would concur, wasn't that as dangerous a fall as you've ever witnessed in a basketball game from the height he fell? Now he is such an athlete. He's so lithe and just agile that he actually fell pretty softly, given how bad it was from how high he fell.
In the air, yeah.
But that was all good for Steph. Way to go, Steph. I'm not so sure that that was good for the Warriors. And again, Steph did come in, and for the record, as we know, the first shot, he just looks out of it. It's a two-point jump shot, and he misses everything by a mile by his standards. It looked like he missed it like 2 feet left. If I'm Steve Kerr at that point, I'm thinking, okay, hang on now. What are we doing here? And then his next, I think it was his next shot attempt, is a three-point shot, which just gets blocked in his face because it was just forced right into his defender. Then I'm Steve Kerr. I'm thinking, okay, Steph, come over here and sit by me and just cool out for a little while. Let's see how this thing starts to unfold. Well, here's the point, Stephen A. Smith. What was amazing to me is once Steph left the game in the second quarter, the Rockets started to feel some pressure and started missing shots that they were hitting in the first quarter because all of a sudden they were supposed to win the basketball game. After they had been a 4.5-point underdog at home in a closeout game, all of a sudden they were the overdog. They were the favorite, and it was starting to bother them that there was no Steph. And guess who just turned into Steph? Klay Thompson. Didn't you see a new Klay? And again, he has to play a little bit in Steph's shadow. Again, he's the new MVP. And all of a sudden, Klay was fire at will. And he was shooting shots with conviction. We haven't seen him shoot them over the last, 4 or 5 games, certainly in this series. And I liked the flow of the offense because all of a sudden they were playing with the urgency I wanted to see from the tip-off. Now you got some backup guys in. You've got Iguodala and you've got Barbosa, and they're scrambling. They're creating turnovers. They're getting out on the break, and all of a sudden they go on a 23-9 run and made it a basketball game. And when Steph did come back, it was a little shaky. I thought he was over-dribbling a little bit, and they lost some offensive flow. Definitely Klay lost a little offensive flow when Steph came back. Now, they did continue to creep back into the game, and just for the record, with 7:52 left in the fourth quarter, Barbosa has a three that lips out that could have cut it to 3. Well, that might have been interesting, and by then Steph had sort of found some rhythm and started to look like Steph again. But to me, and this is easy 20/20 hindsight, though I was tweeting about this on the fly, but if I'm Steve Kerr, easy for me to say, sitting in this chair, I might have just said, I admire your courage, Steph, but I need you to come sit by me for a little while here. Right. Just cool out. Let's see how it all unfolds, because I think they started to get the Rockets on the run without Steph because he wasn't on the floor. Psychologically, the Rockets were starting to crumble like, oh, my God, we're not making shots anymore. So that was just me. It felt like the game was going in Golden State's favor with no Steph Curry.
Yeah, and I think that, if you don't have him on the floor, and you still end up losing game 4, then there's always the momentum that he's coming back for game 5. Whereas you lost it with him back on the floor. So even though it may not make much of a difference, because I don't believe it will, in the end, that's a chunk of momentum that you could have had in your back pocket that you now don't have.
Now, we're going to have to go through another day off here. And I assume it's going to require another concussion protocol just to make sure he doesn't have second-day symptoms, which they often have. So it still could be a little dicey here for the Game 5 back at home. Although I would still slightly like the Warriors' chances even without Steph at home in a closeout game.
Okay.
The question now becomes whether or not this is the end of the road for Ray McDonald as far as his time in the National Football League. I would venture to say absolutely it is. Teams are just not going to be willing to take on someone now who has been involved in 3 separate incidents involving something of this matter. GMs are very conscious as far as what the individual fan bases feel, what their locker rooms feel as far as the types of players that they bring in. And it's not something that they are willing to risk anymore.
Here's the timeline. In August of 2014, Ray McDonald arrested on felony domestic abuse after police saw injuries on his pregnant fiancée. Later, the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office decided not to file any criminal charges. In December, Ray McDonald accused of sexual assault. That case still under investigation. As a result, however, the 49ers released him. Enter second chance or third chance, depends how you see it. The Bears pick up McDonald in March. A new team with the same decision-making. McDonald was arrested Monday on a charge of domestic violence and child endangerment. I'm all for second chances. People deserve a second chance, but this is a case of poor decision-making. McDonald could be innocent of these charges, but he continues to put himself in these situations where the results end in his arrest. So the optics don't look good, and I can't see him playing for any team in the league. So moving forward, we ask this question. Should the Bears have signed him to begin with? Skip Bayless, you first.
Stephen A. Smith, I personally would not have taken a chance on Ray McDonald, but I cannot condemn, I'll use that word again, I would not condemn the Bears for taking that chance that they took on Ray McDonald. To reiterate and amplify what Kerry just read, he was booked on suspicion of felony domestic violence after an incident involving his fiancée. She was pregnant at that time.
Pregnant at the time.
Okay. But no charges were filed after the alleged victim refused to cooperate. We often see that happen. And then he became a suspect, did Ray McDonald, in a sexual assault investigation. And even this is when the 49ers cut bait with him, but he turned right around and filed a defamation suit against his sexual assault accuser. Okay? So initially, George McCaskey, now chairman of the Bears, said no to Ray McDonald. But after the Bears and McCaskey did more homework, they talked to Urban Meyer, his college coach at Florida. And obviously they now have Vic Fangio, who was the defensive coordinator in San Francisco for Ray McDonald, is now with the Bears. So they had his testimony right there, first person for them. And after McCaskey sifted through that, he said, okay, I'll back off. Let's take a shot here. Again, I don't remember any real outcry when they first gave him a shot. Do you remember outcry? I don't remember any
I just remember
any negativity.
I remember him saying that he didn't like people to judge him what they didn't know. But you're right. There was no pushback.
Again, as you know, Stephen A., even as a lifelong Cowboy fan, I'm not on board with Jerry Jones bringing in Greg Hardy. So that's just me. That's my personal view of these things. I wouldn't take that chance. But again, is it okay for the Bears to have taken this chance? It's fine with me. I again, can't condemn it. Am I surprised by what just happened? I am not surprised. So maybe in the end, the joke is on them for trying this. He's a pretty good player. And as we keep hearing from our analysts on the network, usually it's how good a player you are in this league is how much of a risk they'll take on you. So they took some risk because he's still a pretty good player, and it blew up in their face. Again, no surprise here. I wouldn't have tried it in the first place, but I don't blame them because I don't think many people did blame them as far as condemning them for giving him his first opportunity.
Well, here's my opinion. Number one, I do not condemn the Bears, nor do I think this has blown up in their face. As I reiterated yesterday when we were talking about Greg Hardy and the Dallas Cowboys, this is on Ray McDonald. He's the one this is all blown up in his face. He's the one that's cost himself a career. He's the one that has exercised, as far as I'm concerned, stupidity, heinousness, and beyond. Because to just find yourself in this position, whatever the particulars are, because we certainly don't know, but to find yourself in this position yet again, he deserves what he gets. He gets no sympathy this way. If I'm the Chicago Bears, however, if you're telling me that he's a good player, and I believe he's a pretty decent player as well, I don't knock the Chicago Bears for taking this chance. Let's analyze and dissect why that is, Skip Bayless. We have a situation where he was charged suspicion of domestic violence in August, okay? Ultimately, the DA declined to file charges. The NFL also decided not to exact any kind of league punishment whatsoever. In December Okay? The first one was in Santa Clara. In December, suspicion of sexual assault. San Jose Police Department, case still remains open. Obviously, that's a red flag. But what happened was, if you remember, the chairman for the Bears, Mr. George McCaskey, said, no, I don't want him, and GM Ryan Pace was willing to move on. What happens? Ray McDonald himself picked up the phone, according to McCaskey, and requested a face-to-face, at which time he sat down with him, looked him in the face, went by one incident after another, according to McCaskey, went into grave detail about every minutia of what had transpired. He looked in the man's eyes, and he said, okay, I got this. I hear your information. You do understand that your career is on the line. You get into any kind of incident whatsoever because you are categorically denying this. You are, pursuing legal action against the accuser. Okay? So we get it. I'm looking you in your face. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because Ray McDonald did not intimate that this is a misunderstanding. He claimed he was innocent. So because of that, I have no problem with the Bears organization saying, okay, well, since you haven't been indicted and you're not going to jail and what have you, and even the league itself has not punished you for this, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it ain't a damn mongoose. So in other words, if you find yourself in this situation again, all the benefit of the doubt that you have received will be immediately eviscerated, and you are persona non grata. You will be gone. You will probably not be in this league again. Don't let this stuff happen again. We don't care about an arrest. We don't care about innocence as opposed to guilt. We don't care about none of that. As far as we're concerned, you find yourself in this situation again, you are guilty in our eyes. In all likelihood, the entire NFL and your behind will be gone quicker than you could say your last name. I have no problem with McCaskey giving that kind of ultimatum to a guy in Ray McDonald who wasn't indicted and ultimately thrown in jail because he was found guilty. He was saying he didn't do it. You gave him the benefit of the doubt, but you let him know. It better not happen again because it don't matter what the truth is, whatever it might be, even though you look guilty as hell. In the end, we're going to assume you are guilty because you have found yourself in this situation again. And then this man turns around and does it and finds himself in this situation again. I can't agree with Mr. Riddick, our analyst for the NFL, more. This is it for Ray McDonald. I don't give a damn if he never gets another chance. To have your mama come out publicly and support you, to have Vic Fangio come out, goes from San Francisco to Chicago, puts his name on the line and supports you, to have GM Ryan Pace put his name on the line and supports you and goes upstairs to the chairman. And the chairman himself answers to the city of Chicago. If I recall correctly, Skip, Kerry, did he have some kind of press conference where he was talking to the Chicago media about his decision to bring this guy on board? You've got all these people who have come to your defense, and you still find yourself in this situation? I'm done. Forget him. Go find a regular job someplace else, and we hope that you be fine and you can take care of your family or whatever. But your football days in the National Football League have just ended. All because you couldn't control yourself enough to make sure that you are not in this situation. No mercy, no pity, no sympathy, no nothing. Done. Because he put other people's name on the line to support him. And the mere fact that you even have your name in the news because of this, without us knowing the details, you put yourself in this position. No pity. Goodbye. Have a nice life.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Tonight, the Cavs look to sweep the Hawks and make the NBA Finals for the first time since 2007. If the Cavs win, LeBron James will become the first player not from the 1960s Celtics dynasty to reach the finals in 5 consecutive seasons. So Stephen A, does the series end tonight?
Absolutely. That's what I'm of the opinion of. I think that Atlanta's best shot was Game 3. I want to applaud them again for the valiant effort they put forth in Game 3 because I didn't see that coming. It took overtime to take them out despite the fact Kyle Korver was out. DeMarre Carroll, even though miraculously he's looking healthier, at least during games, after games, Skip, he was limping noticeably. And his legs are kind of skinny too, so when you hurt that knee, it's not like you got a lot going there, so it's going to be relatively fragile. It's going to be a challenge for him, but I think that he'll be ready to go tonight. I just don't think they have the horses. I said coming into the series, they're exceptionally well coached by Budenholzer. He's done a fabulous job. Danny Ferry, who's been exiled, needs to be brought back. He deserves it. He assembled this team. Atlanta seems to be in a good place. He should be brought back as well. Enough's enough. But with all of that being said, they're just devoid of somebody to give the ball to when it's crunch time. They're devoid of that individual to hand the ball to and to say, take me to the promised land when everything else is going wrong. They just simply don't have that. And when you consider the fact that they're on the road, that they just suffered a heartbreaking loss in Game 3, I think the die has been cast. I think the stage is set for the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James to be advancing to the NBA Finals. I don't see any way how Atlanta can win tonight's game unless the Cavaliers simply elect not to show up because they got a big head and they take Atlanta for granted and they're not on their game. I think that potentially was the case in Game 3. I think because of the outcome of because of the way things transpired in Game 3, I don't see that happening for a second consecutive game. LeBron will be big time tonight. He will carry the load, and somebody else, whether it's Amon Shumpert, J.R. Smith, or even Matthew Dellavedova, somebody else will step up, and Tristan Thompson will be active for all 48 minutes tonight, not just the last 24. I see Cleveland closing the deal and going to the finals.
I am with you. Cleveland at home tonight is a 7.5-point favorite, and I think they'll win by 7 or 8 points. I'm sure that Atlanta will be game tonight. I'm sure they will hang in. I'm sure they will give it whatever they have left to give it. But even though we know LeBron was banged up the other night, we know he cramped up the other night, Stephen A., wouldn't you agree that tonight LeBron James, high basketball IQ that he does have, wouldn't he say to himself and his teammates, we got to dredge it up tonight. This is huge for us because if we can win this game, we got Kyrie banged up, and I'm sure they've all got their various bumps and bruises. They could have 9 days off before Game 1 of the NBA Finals if they close out at home tonight. They would eliminate that trip back to Atlanta. They would eliminate that game. Unless you want to give me the rust factor that they would want to play an extra game just to stay in rhythm, I'm not going to buy that. I think that LeBron knows they need to finish it tonight for the sake of their team in the NBA Finals. And when his defender, as you point out, DeMarre Carroll, is basically playing on one leg, it looks so bad to me, Stephen A., I won't be surprised if he needs some kind of arthroscopic cleanup surgery on that knee that he hyperextended. I don't know how he's playing at all, but he limps and gimps around, and he does the best he can on LeBron. LeBron can score on him, certainly in the paint, at will. He mostly can dunk on him at will, depending on if Horford's in or out of the game. But now that Horford is back, I'm sure they will hang in. And Stephen A., to me, I don't think people are estimating the loss of Kyle Korver enough. And I'll give you a quick thought. Remember Spurs versus Clippers? Who did they put Kawhi Leonard on? The Spurs? Who was the X factor for the Clippers that they feared the most? J.J. Redick, because of the three-point weapon that the three-point shot has become. So, again, Kyle Korver was the difference maker for this team because the other night in the fourth quarter in overtime, what did they shoot from three? 2 for 11. Teague couldn't make them when he really, really needed to make them. They tried Shelvin Mack instead of Schroeder. I want to see Schroeder play more tonight. He only played 3 minutes the other night. But they need Kyle Korver to make the big-time shots, the game-changing shots from the three-point line. And obviously, they don't have him anymore. So without a defender for LeBron and a three-point difference maker, I don't see how Atlanta can do more than just hang in this game. So I think they are going back to Atlanta by themselves tonight, not with the Cavaliers.
I totally agree with you, but what I want to do, you got to take a moment to give LeBron some props, because like you talk about how he's got to get guys ready or whatever the case may be. I think the only knock that you can have, Skip, in 5 of the 6 playoff years that LeBron James has experienced, he shot in 49% from the field or better. In this particular playoffs, not this series, but throughout these playoffs, he's shooting like 42.4%. But he's still averaging 27. He's still averaging 10 rebounds. He's still averaging 8 assists. And this is a guy that's been doing it for the last 2 playoff series virtually without Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving.
Yep.
And he's about to take them to the finals. I mean, we can sit there and nitpick just like we did the other day, 37, 18, and 13. I stand by that. It was far from the greatest performance I've ever seen from LeBron James, but I got to give credit where credit is due. He walked in Cleveland not just to continue to be a great player, but to really, really cement his status as a great leader. And when I see what we're getting from a J.R. Smith, when I see the evolution and the development of a Timothy Mozgov, when you look at Tristan Thompson, who's developing, who LeBron wants to get his money and deserves his money, by the way, when you consider all the components that come into play, the way we were questioning whether or not Black was somebody that was the right guy, whether he would even survive this season, whether LeBron and Kyrie's relationship would continue to mature and grow. All of these question marks, and here they are about to get to the NBA Finals. It may very well be the greatest job we've ever seen LeBron James do in his career.
Okay, I hear you on that. And I do agree to a point with the point you just made. I've been thinking the same thing, just on leadership. I believe he's the co-head coach. I really do. I'm not kidding when I say that. I think I made a half joke at the end of the year. He deserves some consideration for Eastern Conference Coach of the Year because of the job he was doing with his younger teammates. And obviously they don't have Kevin Love. But just for the record, the run that the Cavs have just made through Boston and a troubled Bulls team, and now an Atlanta team that lost Kyle Korver and really has lost DeMarre Carroll for the most part, at least the real guy that we used to know and love. I don't know. That's a pretty easy run to the finals to me. And again, I give it up to LeBron on leadership alone. He made the one big clutch shot, the series changer against Chicago from the corner. You know, I get all that. But when I look at the run and I step back from it, Boston, Chicago, I don't know. I don't know.
The flip side to that, first of all, coming into this season, we thought Chicago was going to be there.
We did.
So you can't discredit the Cavs for what the Chicago Bulls ended up not being. You had the personnel, the acquisition of Pau Gasol. Derrick Rose was healthy for these playoffs, and Jimmy Butler had emerged as an all-star. The components were there. Chicago just wasn't good enough to deal with LeBron. That's number one. Number two, when I look at Atlanta, that's a legitimate argument because I firmly believe that if John Wall had not gotten hurt, Atlanta would not have advanced out of the second rounds. I think the Wizards would have beaten the Atlanta Hawks.
They would have.
But still in all, if you don't have Kyrie, if you've got Matt, think about it. If we came in and you told us it was going to be LeBron with J.R. Shumpert, a young Tristan Thompson and Matthew Dellavedova, we would not have predicted that the Cleveland Cavaliers would be in this position. And for me, where it cements it for me, because you know how much I love my man Melo. But here's the reality. Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith, look at them when they were with the New York Knicks, and look at them on Cleveland. I mean, I knew that Iman Shumpert was a shutdown perimeter defender, but he's making shots too.
Yep.
And I know J.R. is streaky and can make shots. Skip Bayless, I am seeing J.R. Smith play defense like I've never seen him play. In Denver or in New York. I have never seen J.R. Smith play defense the way I'm watching him play defense with this team. All of this stuff is what LeBron deserves credit for.
I agree. That's a tribute to LeBron James. I also think there's a lot of veteran leadership down that bench, guys who aren't getting to play all the way down to Mike Miller.
Sean Marion,
James
Jones, Mike Miller.
I think they're rubbing off. The culture is different in that locker room than the one with the Knicks.
And
yeah, go ahead.
And they've got to, you know what? Believe it or not, and listen, I like Black. Vlad is just young, and the mistakes that he's made when you never coached in the NBA, they're predictable. But Tyronn Lue is going to be an NBA head coach someday. All right, Larry Drew has already proven he can coach because he coached in Atlanta after Mike Woodson was gone. And this guy, Phil Handy, who's working with player development. Damon Jones, who's in that roster. You know what kind of affable personality Damon Jones has. Plus, he can shoot, so he's one of their shooting coaches. I like the staff Vlad has around him, too.
Yeah,
I do. I give him all credit.
Damon Jones does a great job of being LeBron's best buddy. He does. He's great at it. But it's great. It's good for LeBron.
We'll see Damon on set.
Okay, last quick point. You just mentioned him, and we're going to talk about him in depth a little later, but I have to make the point. Tristan Thompson has turned into an absolute beast for this team. He's a difference maker for this team. So they're playing a different brand of toughness, basketball. This is a physical basketball team thanks to him now.
He's going to be an X factor in the finals.
Yes, he will.
LeBron James will become the first player in NBA history to play in 5 consecutive NBA finals with 2 different teams. That is an accomplishment in itself. And the Rockets win last night. Dwight Howard had 14 points and 12 rebounds. He received a flagrant 1 early in the third quarter after throwing an elbow at Andrew Bogut's head. If the NBA decides to upgrade it to a flagrant 2, he would be suspended by accumulation of flagrant foul points. There was also great debate, you all remember this, on Horford's ejection in Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals, where he received a flagrant 2. But we talk about both separately, Stephen A. Do you think the refs actually got the call right this time around?
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, I think, listen, a flagrant 1, as long as it doesn't be a flagrant 2 and it doesn't lead to Dwight Howard getting ejected, I have no problem with it. I don't think he should have been ejected from the game. They were tussling. They're tangling with one another. You're down in big boy territory. Bodies are banging. These are the kind of things that come with the game. They're elements of the game. And I think everybody needs to calm their nerve. I think we've gotten to a point in our society when it comes to professional sports where we're a bit too excessive. And more importantly, we're hypocritical. We're asking these guys to put their bodies on the line, to go out there and be ferocious in their pursuit of success. Sometimes things are not going to look pretty. We certainly don't want people jumping into the stands and fighting with fans or anything like that. But if a tussle here or there takes place with the players themselves, it should not be a cause for an ejection. Because if you are the Houston Rockets or you are an NBA fan, Skip, you know good and well, if Dwight Howard is not playing, considering the fact that Omar Sheik is no longer there and they don't really have any big boys to replace him, they've got no shot. We don't want that excuse. When the Golden State Warriors beat the Houston Rockets, we want Dwight Howard on the floor if the Rockets are losing. And I just think that the NBA and everybody else needs to take that into consideration. They don't need to be fighting with fans. We certainly know that's unacceptable. But outside of that, if a little tussle takes place on the floor, especially as it pertains to big boys banging bodies and battling down low, sometimes arms are going to flail. Elbows are going to fly. It comes with it. Deal with it. Let it go. I want to see Dwight Howard in Game 5, plain and simple.
I am so with you on this and then some. And I'm going to sound grumpy old manish here, but you're old school on this too. I'm so old school that I was actually at the game, and you remember it well, though you were just a young pup at this point.
Yes.
But you remember when Kermit Washington got a running start, cold cock, Rudy Tomjanovich nearly killed him. Obviously, we don't want to see that anymore. I was working for the LA Times then. I was at the game and ended up going to the hospital to make sure he survived the night, is how bad that was. Okay, this is just me. And I do love my NBA basketball, and I love my NBA playoffs. Both what Dwight did and what Al Horford did, to me, in my scheme of things, those were nothing but technical fouls. They were not flagrants, either one of them. Because the more I look at Dwight, it looked worse than what it was. And if I had been part of the officiating team and I'd gone to the sideline and taken a quick look at it, it looks worse because it looks like he's cocking to throw an elbow, and it ends up being a backhand slap. It certainly didn't draw any blood. Bogut winced and sort of fell backwards for a second, but it didn't even sting him, I don't think. It started with a Dwight push followed by a Bogut pushback. This is playoffs, man. No big deal. And Dwight sort of flings his hand back as he's running away.
Yeah.
And just I don't want to catch
Yeah,
you know, like, but it's just like he gets him with the back of his hand across the mouth.
Yeah.
Again, is that a technical foul?
No.
Yes, but I mean, not a flagrant. It's
Yeah,
a technical, yes. But I'm going to say it again on Horford. He had every reason in the world, given what Dova had done to poor Kyle Korver. The more I look at that play, Stephen A., that was flat out dirty, and I still think this is dirty on Horford. And Horford looks like he's going to throw an elbow, but he doesn't throw an elbow. He just kind of drops his 250-odd pounds on Little Deli just to say, no, I'm not going to take that from you. It's just a technical foul. It's not a flagrant 2. It's not an ejection. If you want to say flagrant 1, I guess it's okay, but by my standards, that's a technical foul. So was Dwight. Just play on. It's okay if you just want to send a quick message. Guys, we're not going to stand for that. Right. That's okay with me. But I'm with you, Stephen A. This is such post-Palace brawl overreaction, and that's what it is. We're still paying the price for the Palace brawl.
Absolutely, and it's excessive. And I give a perfect example, just as an aside, but it still has everything to do with what we're talking about. The fans at the Toyota Center last night, because of inclement weather and a tornado supposedly coming, were asked to stay inside the arena. This same Dwight Howard that we're debating may possibly get ejected for the game, stayed behind for hours, taking pictures, fraternizing with fans, doing what he could to make other folks comfortable. Now, some folks may not like that from the perspective of, all right, man, get your attitude on for Game 5 because we're gonna need you to be ferocious. But it's amazing to me how a league that promotes its players the way that they do, that advertises and markets how decent and respectful, because they are, a lot of these, most NBA players are very, very good guys. And they're very, they're in tune with their communities. They're contributors to their communities. Russell Westbrook is feisty and cantankerous and, even abrasive as he may be with the media. This dude is he's just a paragon of virtue when it comes to the community. The things that he does to extend himself and lend a helping hand, the list goes on and on. All I'm saying is that when you're on the court competing, let's understand, we don't want guys going after fans. We certainly don't want punches being thrown. But outside of that, we want that animosity. We want that belligerence towards one another. We want them feisty because it's visual evidence that shows they are as invested as we are in them. They are as invested in winning as we are in them. And because of that, that makes us feel like our hard-earned money is worth spending on these guys. And when you sit there and you're so quick to just eject folks, I'm sorry. The NBA doesn't have a right to do that and then turn around and charge these prices and implore fans to come up there and support the product when you getting guys out of the game. Al Horford should not have been ejected from that game. He should not have been ejected. He was ejected from the game. Game 3 of a playoff game. Dwight Howard is a debate as to whether or not he's going to play Game 5. Are you serious? The way Houston battled Golden State at the Oracle in Games 1 and 2, you're trying to tell me it's a possibility that Dwight Howard may not play because of that?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
They don't make any sense.
And by the way, to continue to frame what happened to Al Horford, model citizen, no track record whatsoever, sweetheart of a guy who had already made 7 out of 10 shots, and you're basically going to hand the game to the home team in a 2-0 series that could have gone 2-1. It's just wrong. And this is my final point. It just in degrees of how bad it looked. I know they brought this up on the telecast last night. Actually, to me, Dwight's was slightly worse than what I thought Horford's was, because Horford didn't hit Little Deli with his elbow. He just dropped on him. So to me, this is a little bit worse. But I wouldn't give either one more than just a straight technical foul. That's just me.
We should find out later on in the day/evening whether or not the refs will upgrade it to a flagrant 2 or if it will remain the same as a flagrant 1. If Super Bowl 50 is anything like Super Bowl 49, the NFL would be thrilled. Right now, the favorite, according to Sportsbook.ag, would be a matchup between Seattle and Indy. Take a look. Seattle, Indy, 15-1, followed by a rematch of Super Bowl 49 between Seattle and New England, or Green Bay and Indy, both at 18-1. So, Stephen A., take a look at the top 5, according to Sportsbook.ag. Do you agree with these odds?
I actually do. I mean, numbers-wise, I don't pay much attention to that. But in terms of who has the best odds, Seattle going up against the Indianapolis Colts, I like that. I look at Seattle. The Legion of Boom remains intact. They're going to be healthy. Pete Carroll has to make amends for the most awful call in the history of the Super Bowl. It's the stupidest call I've ever seen. Okay, and then there's also the fact that they acquired Jimmy Graham. Now, the Legion of Boom has been Jimmy Graham's kryptonite, so obviously people could be down on him to some degree, but there's no question. His athleticism, his ability to go up and get it, makes him one of the elite tight ends in the game of football. And the fact that he doesn't have to go up against the Legion of Boom, I think will embolden him even more to be better. And he was already pretty damn good, if not great. And so when I look at it from that perspective, the fact that Russell Wilson has that kind of target to go with the Curse, to go with the rest of the crew that they have, I like what I'm seeing. Obviously, they re-signed the beast mode Marshawn Lynch as well, and their offensive line knows what it's doing. So when I look at Seattle and the mission that they're going to be on, combined with the fact that their personnel remained intact, and on top of it all, they acquired Jimmy Graham, I definitely think they're the team to beat in the NFC, although I suspect that the Green Bay Packers, and dare I say might even be the Dallas Cowboys, may have something to say about it. Watch out for Arizona, too, assuming Carson Palmer is healthy. In the case of the AFC, Skip, when I look at it, here's what it comes down to for me. I think defensively, the New England Patriots have lost too much. I think losing Browner and Revis is going to be a death knell for them. They'll still make it to the postseason regardless of Tom Brady being suspended for the first 4 games, even though I think that has a possibility of being reduced to 2. But I don't think they're the same team defensively, and I think that's going to be problematic for them. When I think about them, then I think about one other team, and that's the Denver Broncos. I'm not sure Peyton Manning is going to be what he used to be. And when I look at the Indianapolis Colts, the fact that they acquired Frank Gore and they've got Andre Johnson now, who's going to be on his own mission, and I believe he still has a lot left in him with the pieces that they already had in place. I got to admit to you, I think that the Indianapolis Colts, assuming their defense shows up to some degree, I think the Indianapolis Colts should be legitimately viewed as the team to beat in the AFC at this particular juncture.
My goodness, you've turned into John Clayton.
He is.
I've never heard something.
He knows what he's saying about
all that NFL.
He's an expert.
Factoid stuff. Yeah, I'm
wouldn't go that far.
Stephen A. Clayton.
Just doing my homework, baby. Just doing my homework.
You did. I'm impressed. I also did my homework, and I do not agree with his projection. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Let's start with your Indianapolis Colts. And we know you love yourself some Andrew Luck, so yes, you're sort of leaning in that direction. And obviously, when you add a Frank Gore and an Andre Johnson to that offense, and you draft a Philip Dorsett out of Miami and his 4.33 speed to go with T.Y. Hilton and Coby Fleener, you've got something. And I do not doubt this is going to be one of the best offenses in the National Football League, the Indianapolis Colts, Andrew Luck's offense. And if he continues to improve, because he does need to improve, especially in the postseason, and I'm not going to spew out all my Andrew Luck negativity stats on you. We know what they are, but he needs to go a little ways here in the playoffs to rise up to meet the projections that you have for him as a first ballot Hall of Famer. But we won't get into that. I'm looking at the other side of the ball in Indianapolis. And could you please, Stephen A. Clayton, explain to me how you could pick this team to be in the Super Bowl with that defense? Because last year, the Indianapolis Colts defense ranked 19th in points allowed out of 32 teams. That's not very good. 19th out of 32. They added Trent Cole. They added Kendall Langford. It's okay. They lost Corey Redding. They lost Sergio Brown. I don't know. It's like 6 of one, half dozen the other. I can't see the defense being that much better than it was last year. And I do remind you that in the second half in Foxborough, with regulation inflated footballs, Tom Brady and company did a 28-0 number on that defense in the second half with regulation inflated footballs, just for the record. So to me, I'm sorry, I'm not sure about this team. And speaking of the New England Patriots, do you remember what a rampage for revenge they went on in 2007 after Spygate? Do you remember that? When they were just annihilating the league. They won their games that regular season by an average score of 37-17, did Tom Brady and company. Now, we don't know how many games he's going to be eligible to play. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, he misses the first 2. Again, I think he's going to take this to court to get an injunction to play all the games. But remember that year they went 16-0 in the regular season, won the first 2 playoff games to get to 18. And then, unfortunately, we know what happened in the Super Bowl game. The luckiest play in Super Bowl history beat the New England Patriots. I won't even go into what Eli Manning did in the face catch and all that.
You don't need to.
David Tyree.
Well,
I don't even start on that.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
So let's keep in mind, there's 16 games in the season, Skip Bayless. 4 of these games, they gave up, the Indianapolis Colts, that defense that you're talking about, they gave up 31 to the Broncos in the opener. They gave up 30 to the Philadelphia Eagles on that Monday night game. They gave up 51 inexplicably. They just didn't show up on a Sunday afternoon in Pittsburgh. They gave up 42 2 weeks later to New England. So when you have those 4 games and you're giving up that many points, obviously that's going to raise some red flags. It's going to be an alarm. Outside of that, they were relatively respectable for the other 12 games. I'm just looking at it from the perspective that I think their defense is going to be a tad bit better. And I think offensively, they're going to be so much of a force that I think that it will offset what the defense isn't doing for you. So basically, you beat the Denver Broncos. Your kryptonite was the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. And since I don't anticipate that New England will be the same, that's the one team that I would be concerned about for the Indianapolis Colts. Although I would still, I would give New England an edge per se against the Colts. It's against the rest of the league, particularly when you might be getting beat up by defenses in Buffalo and the New York Jets within your own division, where the Colts may not even have to deal with you, other than that one regular season game that you faced them once Tom Brady comes back from his suspension. So I look at it from that perspective, and I say, the Indianapolis Colts, I can understand how there will be for those who see Seattle versus Indy. Now again, it's May. By August or right before the season starts, we'll really get into it. We'll review the rosters and we'll make our predictions accordingly. But at this particular juncture, I would have to say I have no problem with Seattle versus Indianapolis being perceived as a Super Bowl.
I do have a problem with Seattle, and I do love the acquisition of the big tight end Jimmy Graham. But what I don't love about this team, you know what happens when you have a play of that magnitude decide a Super Bowl game? There is some inevitable hangover. There's such backlash to the play that sometimes it's hard for the whole football team to lift itself back up. And I'm seeing that hangover maybe affecting Seattle next year. I'm seeing the carryover positive energy affecting my Dallas Cowboys next year. Right now, and it's only May, I would pick my Dallas Cowboys to be in the Super Bowl representing that side, that
we need
conference.
to tell Sportsbook AG that.
You are certainly entitled to be completely clueless and lost on that particular issue.
Wait, you brought up Dallas as a contender. I heard you. It slipped out of the side of your mouth. You could not help yourself.
I brought him up as a contender by default because of what I'm witnessing within the NFC East. Although I think that the Giants may be a threat, assuming they get the offensive line together. But that hangover effect that you're concerned about with Seattle. I don't have that. And the reason I don't have that, Skip, is because they have attitude. I've spoken to a few of the brothers on the Legion of Boom since they lost that Super Bowl. And the mentality that they have, they're not sitting back and wallowing in sorrow and all of that other stuff because they lost that game. Their mentality is that they weren't 100%. They overcame a lot of obstacles that people neither appreciate nor understand, and they are going to come back ready to raise hell next season. And that's what I anticipate they're going to do. So I would say that they're going to be the favorite so long as they're healthy, because I think that people are going to pay a price for sitting there and doubting those brothers. I really do.
Help me out because my memory gets foggy. What happened last year when Dallas visited Seattle?
They won.
They beat them.
Yeah, they won.
They beat them.
That's right. I
They
forgot
beat
that. You're right.
They beat them.
So
They beat 'em.
now my Dallas Cowboy
Early in the
defense,
season.
not that early, but now my Cowboy
Early
defense
enough.
adds Byron Jones and Randy Gregory.
Sure.
And Sean Lee, the best linebacker, should come back relatively healthy.
Really?
Yeah.
You gonna bring him up? Come on now.
Why wouldn't I bring him up? He's the best player on the defense.
Because he can't stay healthy, Skip. I like him a lot, but
okay,
he can't
well,
stay
I'm going to
healthy.
say he will stay healthy
Okay.
this time.
I hope you're right.
Okay?
I hope you're right.
And again, Greg Hardy's down the line after 10 games. I don't know. Can't
bank on that.
Can't bank on it, but it couldn't hurt if he could play after 10 games.
Okay.
And this running back by committee is growing on me. I'm starting to like it. Darren McFadden, Ryan Williams, Joseph Randall, Lance Dunbar, and then that receiving court. Does it get any better than what my Cowboys have with Dez and T. Will and Jason Witten and Cole Beasley? Cole Beasley out of the slot? Is he not a force now? I'm saying, wait a second. Romo should have been the regular season MVP.
You thought?
I thought, well, he should have been.
So Skip.
He had the numbers.
Skip, this is not a Cowboys game. You are not a Cowboys cheerleader. You don't have, I mean, the pom-poms are going to have to wait, bro. We're not going here. It's May.
Put 'em away.
I'm not going to sit here and listen to you sell me on the Cowboys.
Right here in the
I got a feeling.
You do not.
I got a metallic blue feeling.
Ain't nobody trying to hear. Nobody trying to hear that in May. Wait until August.
It's
I mean,
May.
Lord, spare me the Cowboys stuff in May. Will you? It's basketball time. I'm not interested in you lying about the Cowboys and trying to feed Cowboy Nation into believing they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. Could you at least wait until July, August to do that, please?
No.
You want to wait?
In my sports book, I got Dallas representing the NFC in the Super Bowl.
Okay,
That's
sportsbook.skip. Not
and I have to wait on the Patriots to see what Brady's penalty is.
I got Romo and Garrett showing up to the NBA Finals. How about that?
Okay.
That's what
all
I
you got?
Yes.
I don't know. Cowboys, Super Bowl contenders.
Yep. Okay, but I think
Spare me.
They're getting
not
there.
They're in
interested.
Super Bowl 50?
Yeah. Is that what it is? We're up to 50?
They were in Super Bowl 50.
How quickly the years go by.
ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
Throw to the plate, safe at the plate!
right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio.
If anyone was wondering what LeBron James thinks the Cavs should do about the impending free agency of teammate Tristan Thompson, LeBron made his stance clear on Monday.
Tristan should probably be a Cavalier for his whole career. There's no reason why he shouldn't. This guy's 24 years old. He's played in 340-plus straight games, and he's gotten better every single season. It's almost like, what more can you ask out of a guy, even though we ask for more out of him? He's a young guy, but he's a professional who loves to come to work every day, and he plays his heart out every single night. And he has zero sense of entitlement in this league. All he cares about is coming in to work, whatever is given to him. He relishes the opportunity, and he's a great teammate, so he'll be here for a long time.
It's worth noting that Thompson and LeBron James share the same agent, and Rich Paul. Also worth noting, Thompson turned down a reported 4-year, $52 million extension before the season started. So, Stephen A., here's a question. I think you alluded to it earlier. Do you agree with LeBron?
Absolutely. I think LeBron is right on the money here. Tristan Thompson's young. He's energetic. He plays hard. Actually, the last game in the first half of the last game was the only time where I saw a relatively lackluster effort. And I don't want to sit there and say he was lazy or anything. I think he was just a bit perturbed, a bit frustrated that things weren't going his way, and he let that get the better of him. But he came out and played like a man in the second half and did what he's been doing throughout the series. And I truly believe he's going to be the X factor in the next series, because if Tristan Thompson can dominate the boards the way that he has throughout these playoffs, that's going to limit the Golden State Warriors shot opportunities once they get to the finals themselves, and that's going to make life very, very difficult for a perimeter shooting team. So he's definitely going to be an X factor, and I definitely applaud LeBron James stepping up and really, really acknowledging what this kid brings to the table and looking out for him the way that he did. Because the Cleveland Cavaliers, quite honestly, should have got him signed just like the Chicago Bulls should have got Jimmy Butler signed. Now that they failed to do so, it's going to cost them a few additional million dollars. Tristan Thompson, anywhere from 12 to 15, closer to 15. He's going to be worthy of max dollars, because that's a max contract. $15 million a year right now for him in his age bracket. When you consider the NBA economy, what he brings to the table and what his upside is, I don't know if the Cavaliers can make an argument against him at that particular moment in time. However, Skip, it's worth noting that David Griffin, the GM, who I think has done a really, really good job, does have some decisions to make. Remember, Anderson Varejao is still committed for the next 3 years at approximately $29 to $30 million. You still have him, and Mozgov has it. They've got a team option on him. I believe he's getting paid about $4.9 million, if my numbers here are correctly, and it's a team option for him. I believe you have to keep Mozgov. Mozgov's got a lot of talent. He's relatively young, and he's a big, legitimate center. He's a legitimate 7-footer. He legitimately causes you problems because of his size and his defensive prowess, and it's his presence that assists in Tristan Thompson being able to do what he does. With Varejao coming back, their belief might be, well, we can't keep everybody, therefore we might have to sacrifice Mozgov. I think that would be a mistake. He's not the priority over Tristan Thompson, but it is a priority for them to keep both of those guys to shore up your front line for years to come, and LeBron not to have to be worried about having to transition to playing power forward most of the time defensively, because they're devoid or bereft of big bodies. So I think those are the kind of things that you have to take into consideration. But in the end, you look at Tristan Thompson, he is worth it, not just because of his level of production, but because of his age and therefore his upside. You have to retain Tristan Thompson. You do not need to lose him.
Should we factor in at all that Rich Paul represents obviously LeBron and Tristan Thompson, or that Tristan is represented by LeBron's agency in effect?
Well, you have a right to do that. Rich Paul and LeBron would categorically deny that. Yep. They'll have to get over it. Because obviously, if I'm representing LeBron James, and LeBron James is endorsing this dude for his franchise, and and LeBron is approaching free agency, I mean that would make me raise an eyebrow and, dare I say, be a little bit more alert. But it's not like LeBron is wrong to do it. You have every right as a resident superstar to sit there and want guys on your squad who you believe help you be as great as you are. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm with you on this. I liked what LeBron said about Tristan, and I endorse it also. I also loved what he said about Tristan has no sense of entitlement in this league. We've had him on the show. Help me out.
Yes. It was last year at the ESPYs.
At the ESPYs.
He's a great kid.
He's a great kid, and he doesn't take himself very seriously, which is why he's got that blue-collar work ethic on the backboards. It's why, once he became a starter in the wake of losing Kevin Love, that he's averaged 11.5 rebounds in the postseason, including 4 offensive rebounds a game. And as you know, Stephen A., is there a better offensive rebounder in the league than this guy? Just on heart, will, guts, whatever it is that makes you an offensive rebounder, anticipation, just the fight that you have in you, there's no better than this guy. As I said earlier in the show, he has become beastly on the backboards. And this is just me. I'm going to go out on this limb already here. I like this team better with Tristan Thompson in the starting lineup than I like it with Kevin Love.
Yeah.
And it's Kevin Love's option to come back to Cleveland next year.
I was going there.
$16.7 million. If he says, I want it, they have to give it to him. If he says he doesn't, he's unrestricted on the open market. For all involved, for Kevin Love and for the Cavaliers, I think it would be a good split. I don't think he ever did fit in there. Remember, we went back to fit in, fit out with LeBron tweeting about it? Again, Kevin Love is a talent. We do not deny that. I don't deny that. He averaged 16 and 10 rebounds for this team. But the 10 he gets are very different than the 10 or 11 that Tristan gets. And I like the sort of the fight that he gives this team. It has a toughness with Tristan on the floor that it doesn't have with Kevin Love. He is more of a finesse player. Some people call him soft, whatever you want to call him. He's finesse. And obviously, he can be a deadly three-point shooter, and Tristan isn't much of a shooter at all because he can barely make half of his free throws. But all of a sudden in the playoff, with the acquisition of J.R., who's making 40% of his threes in the postseason, Kyrie's making 47%, Shumpert's making 38%, Deli's making 35%, and he's made a bunch of big ones. He'll make some clutch, tough ones with little Deli. And James Jones come off the bench and made 36%. You make up for what you lost with Kevin Love. And I know he can pull a big out the way, out of the paint for LeBron. I don't think LeBron is minded playing with Tristan Thompson at all. I don't think Tristan gets in his way at all. So, again, I like the makeup of the team better with Tristan Thompson.
I totally agree with you in the big picture. I definitely like the makeup of the team. I think Tristan being on the roster, on the floor rather, definitely gives them a level of toughness. Kevin Love is not soft, but he is finesse. Because he'll go out there and bang and get some rebounds. He's not soft, but he is smaller than he was in Minnesota. And as a result, he has more of a finesse game. He was bulkier in Minnesota a couple of years ago. He's lost a little bit of weight. He's a little bit more slender than he used to be. But his game Kevin Love can play the game of basketball. Here's the problem. It's not the $16.7 million option that he has as a player. It's the lofty contract long-term he's looking for from the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yep.
That's where the problem lies. Because he's not just looking for money next year. He's looking for money for the next 5 years. And if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, Skip, I think you make that decision based on what you see in these finals. If you go to the finals and you can't win the chip because your perimeter shooting is suspect and your free throw shooting is suspect, that hurts Tristan Thompson.
Yeah.
But if you find a way to win the chip with Tristan Thompson on the floor, with JR and the other guys doing what you do, you have now validated that you don't need to give Kevin Love $100 million. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so that's what you have to do. Now, these kind of deals, there could be quiet, unwritten, tacit promises, so ultimately that factors into the equation. But taking away that and taking away the politics of the business, looking at pure basketball, literally as we sit here today, regardless of what LeBron says, and both your and my support of everything he said about Tristan Thompson, these finals are going to be pivotal for Tristan Thompson because he has to show up, be that X factor, and more importantly, you know what, not just rebounding, because we know he could do that. Got to make some free throws.
Yep.
Got to put in some points. Because if the Cleveland Cavaliers lose these finals, and it's because J.R. is sporadic offensively, and Iman Shumpert is as well, and James Jones can't come off the bench cold and hit shots, and LeBron is forced to force the action, and you don't have perimeter help against Golden State, that's going to be something that could possibly dictate and infiltrate their decision-making in the offseason.
Okay, last quick question. What do you hear about how happy Kevin Love has been in Cleveland?
I hear that, you know what, it's not that great. I don't hear that he's miserable or anything like that. He has been seen around practice facilities, but you did expect him to be a bit more visible than he has been. We haven't seen much of him. We certainly didn't see him in Atlanta.
He has not been around.
You know what it is? They respect him. They respect his skills. But at the same time, life is fine without him.
Wow.
It's just that kind of impression.
Does it surprise you not to see him on the bench?
It does surprise me. I brought it up the other night in my little living room.
So
where is he?
Where is he? Why isn't he there?
I mean, I know he's got a sling on from his...
But he could be on the bench and show support.
I would assume he could be if he chose to be, and I'm assuming chooses not to be. It's not a great look, actually.
Speaking of Cam Newton, again, like I mentioned, he joined me on the latest podcast. He's also making news with his comments on the Get With the WCCB's Morgan Fogarty. Take a listen.
I say this with the most humility, but I don't think nobody has ever been who I'm trying to be. You see what I'm saying? Nobody's had the size, nobody's had the speed, nobody's had the arm strength, nobody's had the tangibles that I've had. I'm not saying that to say that, you know, I'm a one-on-one type of person that this league will never see another. No, I'm not saying that. And hear me out. I'm just saying that so much of my talents have not been seen in one person.
All right, so that was on the Get With WCCB's Morgan Fogarty. Stephen A., what do you make of Cam's comments?
Well, I think he needs to be careful. I definitely think that he's sincere when he's talking about how he's speaking with humility. I did not take it wrong. I did not take it negatively. I think that when you look at what he's saying on its face, it makes sense because I've seen quarterbacks with his strength. I've seen quarterbacks with his size. I've seen quarterbacks with his speed. I've seen quarterbacks with his ability. But I haven't seen it all rolled up into one human being. The problem is when Cam Newton, Skip, comes out and says, I don't think that anybody has been what I'm trying to be. That statement in and of itself is factually incorrect. Because at the end of the day, Cam Newton, we'd like to believe, you've told us on many occasions, and me knowing you well enough, having spoken to you on several occasions, I know that what you're trying to be in the end is a winner. And there are a lot of dudes that have strived to be that, and some have pulled it off. He has yet to do so. Cam Newton won in college, but on a pro level, in 4 complete years, he has 1 winning season. He has 2 consecutive playoff appearances the last 2 years. All right? But they were 12-4 a couple of years ago when they lost in the divisional playoff game to the San Francisco 49ers. They were 7-8-1 last year in the regular season and still advanced to the divisional playoff round before, you know, they lost to Seattle where he threw a pick 6. When you sit there and you make a statement like that, some people are going to look at it and say, well, what else are you trying to be other than a winner? And that's really what the bottom line is. No matter what he says in terms of what he wants to accomplish, it could be through various avenues. But in the end, what you're trying to be is a winner. And there are a whole bunch of quarterbacks who have pulled that off. And Cam Newton has yet to be one of them. I believe he will. I believe in this brother. You 6'6", you 250, 260 pounds with his ability, you know, and his heart. He ain't scared of the moment, etc. I believe in Cam Newton, and I think that he's a great, great guy. It's just that I want him to be careful about a statement like that because there's winning and then there's everything else. You can have everything else, but it don't matter if you don't win.
Yep. I'm pretty much with you here. I'm definitely not going to blast Cam Newton for what he said, but I'm with you that I would, if he asked me, which he won't, but I would warn him. It's a little bit of a dangerous statement to make because I'm not sure how to interpret it in the big picture of what really matters. I like it. Heck, I love it that he prefaced with, I say this with the utmost humility.
Right.
That works for me. But the statement he made does not apply to being a successful quarterback in the National Football League because, as you well know, Stephen A. Smith, size, strength, arm strength, speed, none of it really matters unless you can perform, unless you can play. And I can only look at the numbers. Now we have a 4-year body of work for Cam Newton. 4 years, and his QBR, my favorite quarterback stat, has hovered right at 56 for 4 years. That includes his ability to rush the football, to run. And he was first in quarterback rushing his first year, then second, then first, and then last year he was third. All good, but that's factored into the 56, which is right in the middle. It's mediocre. It's 16th of those who qualify, down to 33, 34, 35 quarterbacks. It's just okay. It's not bad, and it's not great. And I look at the accuracy, and the only thing, my only concern about Cam coming out of Auburn was, can you be consistently accurate throwing the football in the National Football League? His accuracy over those 4 years is 60%, which ranks 23rd over the last 4 years. It's not bad, but it's not great. And to your point, did he win? So as a starting quarterback, he's 30, 31, and 1. So he's one game under 500. And as you pointed out, he's 1-2 in the postseason, though there's certainly no shame in having lost to the 49ers and the Seahawks in the postseason. He's in the postseason 5 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. It's all okay. He made a couple of Pro Bowls. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, but it's not pretty great. So, Stephen A., I sit back and the numbers tell me that statement you made wasn't worth making. It doesn't get you anywhere, because are you striving to do what Stephen A. Smith just said you should be striving to do, which is win football games? However you have to do it, you have to do it through leadership, and we've questioned some of his leadership skills. He's been by himself on the bench too often, puts the towel over his head, seems to remove himself. It seems that's old, but he's had to mature through that. However you do it, you need to get your team to one more level in the postseason, and he's been pretty good, but not pretty great.
The only thing I want to say left is, like, the kid's got tremendous upside. He's got all the skills. He's personable. He's affable.
He is.
His pros far outweigh his cons. It's just that at the end of the day, here's what ultimately is damaging about that statement. It gives the impression that other things outside of winning are as much of our priority as winning. And when that is the perception and you don't win, then you give fodder to those who believe that you're preoccupied with other stuff that's getting in the way of getting it done. Whether it be carrying yourself a certain way, playing a certain way, bringing all of your greatness to the forefront. At the end of the day, sometimes winners sacrifice looking good while doing so just to get the result that they want to get.
True.
And that's what you do when you're winning. Sometimes winning ain't throwing for 400 yards or 500 yards or having a 4,000-yard season or a 5,000-yard season. Sometimes winning is ball control and handing it off to a running back and letting your defense do the deal and keeping the mistakes at a minimum. It could be any of those things. And when you say what he said, it gave the impression that he's carrying a load on his shoulders because he's prioritizing other things as much as winning, and you don't win that way in the National Football League.
Anything else? You good?
No,
all right,
good.
so overall record 30, 31-1. 73rd on the NFL's list of top 100 players. Cam Newton looking to be legendary and to be more, as you both said, a winner. All right, so LeBron James is seeking to become the first player in NBA history to play in 5 consecutive NBA Finals, while doing so for 2 different teams. I mentioned that earlier. So we talk about tonight. He might be able to wrap it up. What do you believe the final score will be, Stephen A.?
Tonight, I'm going to sit there. I'm going to say Cleveland 97, Atlanta 91.
Close through 3 quarters?
Yes.
Yes. I've got
They pull away in the end.
Okay, I've got a tie game through 3 quarters. Atlanta battles, gamely, whatever they have left. And then that guy for Cleveland, that
LeBron?
What's it, LeBron? Oh, yeah, LeBron James. I always forget his name. That LeBron guy starts to take over in the 4th because Damari Carroll runs completely out of gas on one leg. And LeBron, I'm going to say he scores 10 points in the paint in the 4th quarter to take over a game that the Cavaliers finally pull away and win 102-94, slightly covering this 7.5-point spread.
102-94.
Yep.
So there's no way, Skip Bayless, you believe that the Hawks can pull this out?
There is a way. The X factor tonight for me is my new favorite little player, Dennis Schroeder, who sort of got doghoused the other night. I don't know what was going on between him and Budenholzer, but he barely got in the game, allegedly because they needed more scoring. But I think he can score. I think he can ignite. So I would like to see him play a little bit more than he played, and just to mix things up and shake things up. He would be my X factor for the Atlanta Hawks.
All right, Stephen, any X factors for you for the Hawks? Pulling out a miracle here.
Millsap's got to show up and play big. Along with, he's got to help Horford out because Millsap used to be in Utah. He's respected around the league. He's got ability. He's got to show up and play. With Korver out, with Carroll clearly injured, I'm assuming Jeff Teague is going to do what he's been doing, but Horford's going to remain in the game, and I think Millsap's going to have to play big tonight. But I still think it ultimately will be entirely too much.
All right. And by the way, speaking of Millsap, please don't let him guard LeBron James tonight.
He won't do that tonight.
He cannot.
They're going to make some adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
We also want to mention for the folks who are watching us tomorrow, we have Turtle on the show. He's back.
Yeah.
You know there's a new movie, an Entourage movie coming out.
Yeah.
And so he'll be here to talk about the movie. There's a reason why you weren't allowed to be in it, but he asked for you. He had a cameo for you.
Did he? Yeah.
So also, Milwaukee Bucks. He plays for the Milwaukee Bucks, does he not? Jared Dudley?
Yes.
Okay. Because he's a journeyman. He's all over the place. Stephen A., are you looking forward to seeing either one of our two guests?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I always welcome guests on the show. I always appreciate the great work that they do. But it's just amazing their timing is always when I'm out of studio.
Yeah.
I think it's on purpose. I think it's something that Skip Bayless manipulates.
I am dreading Jerry Ferrara's presence tomorrow, Turtle's presence, because he's a bird of your feather. He's a bigger New York Giant football fan than you are. So now I'm going to get double teamed tomorrow with all this Giants talk.
He has proven to be a brilliant young man.
Has he proven to be a brilliant young man?
Yeah.
All right, again, join us tomorrow. We'll have Jerry Ferrara here. I just call him Turtle because that's his name. Turtle will be here.
He'll always be Turtle.
He will always be Turtle. Jared Dudley will join us as well. We hope you do the same. Again, it's 10 to 12, ESPN2. See you then. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.
Miguel Cabrera leads the Detroit Tigers into Anaheim to face Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Angels. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN2 and on ESPN Radio.